from the BarnBurner Network on Zingo TV channel 250. Please remember to download both the BarnBurner and Zingo TV apps from the respective iOS and Android app stores, as both apps are absolutely free. And of course, while you download, please make sure to rate and leave a comment because we want to hear from you. Yes, we do. And of course, Zingo TV is also available on Google, Chromecast, Amazon Fire, and Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and is also available on all smart TVs from 2016 forward. So welcome, folks. This is the Club Track Show on BarnBurner Network, and of course on Zingo TV channel 250. And let's introduce my special, cool dude co-host here. He's of course he's been a long time singer the Handful, lead singer and guitarist of the Handful out of New York City. So please welcome the one, the only, Mr. Mark Cool Dude Duda.
Good to see you, brother. Ready for the big show.
You too. Big show once again.
No doubt.
It's been a really cool stretch, I gotta say.
Yeah.
Pretty cool stretch. And so what's new with Mark, man? What's new with Mark?
Man, you know what? One day to the next, the whole pandemic's been a little bit like Groundhog Day. But having said that, it's been a good Groundhog Day. Waking up, playing guitar, hanging out with my family, counting my blessings, and getting ready for the big show every week. So I can't complain, brother. How about you?
Yeah, it's just been just hanging in there. Just for me, I should work a couple jobs. So and they're both basically, well, one's actually is like considered essential services. So I do actually I'm probably management by day.
Okay.
The night but yeah, all my box stuff's all on hold for obvious reasons. So I can't do any kind of coaching right now. So
yeah. Well, it's nice to have this outlet, right? So
definitely,
I'm in the same boat. Thank you, brother.
Yeah, definitely. It's always a pleasure to have you on the show, man. So let's introduce our cool guest this evening. He is the bassist and vocalist of Canadian rock power trio Gatto. Before his days with Gatto, he was the founding member of the band Flood. He's also a member of the band Sherman and Peabody. And he's also the author of a couple of cool books, by the way, folks. Travels with My Amp, and his latest book, which is Up Close and Uncomfortable. So please welcome the Mr. One and Only Greg Gotovitz.
Yeah,
Greg, right on. Woohoo!
It looks like he's being dropped off by UFO.
Yeah, by UFO here.
Previously
here we go.
Abducted.
And he's here.
Greetings,
sir.
This is the cow. I gotta figure this out here. And this comes
kind
in.
of an exsanguination procedure.
And somehow, except I dropped it and broke it. Oh, here we go.
Okay, here's something there. Yeah. Oh, there we go. Yeah, we're flying it.
The cow is mooing.
Oh, kids show.
This is what I got for Christmas, guys. This was my favorite Christmas present this year.
Oh, right on.
Nice to be here.
Well, thanks for being on the show, man. Great pleasure to have you on.
My pleasure. When they told me how much money you guys were sending me, I couldn't resist.
We're the big show, so we're the big bucks. I hear you.
It's okay. I'm used to it.
Right
and Mark, you're in New York.
Yes.
One of my favorite places in the world.
Nice.
Excellent.
Yeah.
A little cold right now, but can't go wrong with the big city.
Spent a lot of good times down there. You know a guy named Richard X. Heyman?
No, I don't.
He's a pop singer.
Okay.
It's a funny thing. When I was writing this book, Travels with My Amp, his album Cornerstone was stuck in the carousel of my computer. So I listened to it every day for 14 months.
Wow.
And anyway, we ended up becoming friends. And now I have 6 of his albums, and he's absolutely a tremendous songwriter.
Well, it's great. It could have been worse. You could have had Green Day stuck in your computer for
ABBA.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The book would have come out totally different.
Green Day is another man's ABBA.
So they say.
Yeah.
Anyway, and then of course we are here to plug this. So
Absolutely.
They're almost identical sizes. These 2 books, they go, except that
Tomes.
way. This one is my new one. It's called Up Close and Uncomfortable, much like you guys are feeling right now. And
no, not the case.
400 pages of absolute ridiculous silliness. I wanted to write a funny book. This book was funny. I didn't mean it for it to be funny. It's funny. This one, I thought, I'm going to write a humor book. It took me 6 years because being funny and writing funny are two different things.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, you get drunk like you do when you're writing, at least like I do when I'm writing. Ernest Hemingway used to say, write drunk, edit sober.
That's
No,
right.
write drunk, edit hungover is what I discovered was the way to do it. So anyway, 6 years and people tell me it's funny. So I'm happy that it worked out the way it did.
Oh, definitely,
Yes.
definitely. The 6 years though, that's interesting, man. That's very
It
interesting.
wasn't every day, you know, it was
Yeah,
like,
kind of plodding along, right?
yeah. And then sometimes you'd put it down, you know, to use the bathroom or something, you know, you come back to it after a while, but it pretty much took about 6 years, but I started it out in Canmore. I went to a friend's place up in the shadow of the Three Sisters Mountains. And I spent
Nice.
2 months there, basically fireplace going, you know, 10 or 12 cases of wine and a computer, and started writing for 2 months. And then I went to the Dominican Republic and wrote down there, and then back to Canmore, and then came to Toronto. I couldn't write at home, but boy, if somebody had a really nice place and they would let me stay there, I could write there. As long as they had a good wine cellar, we were okay. you
That's
know?
essential. Yeah, that'd be
Exactly.
essential.
So, and then I finished it. We found a house in Prince Edward County in Picton. And
Oh.
I went there for about a month, 2 months on and off, and finally finished the book. I just went, that's it. That's as much as I can write.
Interesting, interesting. So how's life as an author for Greg Grodovitz?
Well, you know, I've been writing stories and stuff since I was a kid. I mean, I even found my grade 6 or 7 yearbook, and there was a story in it about, well, of all things aliens. You know, I seem to have a lifelong, you know, thing for aliens. And I read it and I went, you know, okay, this stinks, but I was only like 8 or 9 years old. So, I mean, it's always sort of been there to write. And then when I started to write the part 2 after Travels with My Aunt came out, I wrote another 150 pages, like a part 2. And I just went, this is boring. This is the same as the other book. So I scrapped it and then started finding short stories that I'd written and stuff that went beyond the realm of just rock and roll, you know, so stuff that was about, well, there's, you know, there's aliens in it, of course, Elvis is in it, why it's stupid to take nothing but winter clothing to the Dominican Republic. And it really is. And then I was on one of the episodes of Schitt's Creek. It was on season 3.
Cool.
Right.
And I got invited in, and I screwed up so badly that the director finally said, who is that old man that keeps wrecking all of our scenes? And then the producer called him Brunton said, that's Greg Grodovitz. And then the director came over and fell on his knees and did one of those "We Are Not Worthy" things.
Yeah.
Then they wrote me into one of the scenes with the cast, and that's when I really screwed up. So the story is called Without a Paddle, or My Big Day Up Schitt's Creek.
Nice.
And that's one of the stories in the new book.
That's cool. That's cool.
Cautionary tale.
Yeah, cautionary tale.
Well,
yeah.
the first book was a cautionary tale, but
The whole
nobody,
thing.
yeah, nobody read it like that, you know.
Yeah. Well, even actually, Eric Bird made a comment about about the book of travels with my aunt.
You talked to Art recently?
Sorry,
Did you say Art Bergman?
Eric Bird.
Eric Bird. Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
that
the
guy.
animals.
Another-
Yeah, he made a
Bird.
comment about your book there. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's good.
Eric, he actually phoned me up one day.
Is that right?
Yeah. So in case I messed that whole thing up, he was saying Eric Burden from the Animals. So yeah, a friend of mine gave Eric a copy of my book when it first came out. And one day the phone rang and I answered the phone and he said, is this Greg Grodovitz? I don't do a very good Geordie impression. And I said, yeah. He goes, it's Eric Burden. And I went, get that boy out of here, you know? And he says, it is. So I'm humming, like, why is one of my British invasion heroes phoning me? And he said, Jeff Craig, who's a writer from Edmonton, lent me your book. He says, I thought I was a rock and roll wild man until I read your book. And then we talked for about an hour. And then finally I said, well, listen, you know, it's great talking to you, but I sort of got to go. And I blew Eric Burden off the phone, you know. But I made it up because I have a story in the new book called Playing Hide and Seek with Eric Burden. And it actually happened where we did a show together, a concert festival out in Winnipeg.
Oh yeah.
And I'm in the hotel, and I get a call up, and the guy says, "Hey, your twin brother just arrived." And I can see how people could say that. We look a bit alike. And I'm jumping up and down on the bed going, "I'm going to meet Eric Byrne. No, I'm going to meet, you know." And my girlfriend says, "No, no, for once in your life, you're going to sit down and be cool." So for 3 days, I was so cool, I never got to hang out with him.
Wow.
Yeah, it was terrible. It was horrible. And then when I finally said, "I'm going down to get his number from the front desk," I go up to the desk and this guy comes up to me and he says, "Really enjoyed your show." I said, "Well, thanks." He goes, "Can I have your autograph?" I said, "Of course." He gives me 3 Eric Burdon albums to sign. He thought I was Eric.
Wow.
Eric, Eric had already booked out of the hotel. I never got to meet him.
Wow. It's quite a story again. Yeah.
That's why I write books, dude.
No kidding. Well, hey, you got a lot of material there, man.
You know?
No, very good. Very good. So I was going to ask you, going to go back to the beginning here for you. So how did you first get involved? Like, I guess what my question should be really is what kind of inspired you to get involved in music? Was there was it a Beatles record in your case you heard? Or what was the case that kind of sparked that door for you?
Well, the funny thing is actually is in the 50s, there was a show called The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet.
My parents tell me about that show.
And Ricky Nelson had his band at the end. Ozzie was smart enough because Ricky was a good-looking kid. He was writing some good songs. He was covering some good songs. So at the end of every episode, Ricky and his band, which also included the great James Burton on guitar, who ended up in Elvis's band.
Right.
And I'd watch it, and I said, "Geez, I want to do this," you know. Now I didn't understand that the curling of the lip thing that Ricky was doing was just because he wanted to be Elvis. But my dad got me an acoustic guitar. I went to see this guy. His name was George Armstrong. Now this is the only sports reference I can make because it used to be like the Chiefs name from the Maple Leafs that won the Stanley Cup. If anybody's old enough to remember that, 60, whatever it was. Anyway. He takes me in and says to me, all I did was take the guitar home, put on Ricky Nelson records, and practice curling my lip in the mirror.
Huh.
After 10 weeks, the guy says to my father, "Mr. Godovitz, this kid will never be a musician." And he was right, because at that point I wasn't ready to be a musician. But then my brother brings home the first Beatles album with the Robert Friedman picture of them in half in silhouette, with the little beetle fringes. I remember looking at it and going, "They look stupid." And then he dropped the needle on the groove. "It Won't Be Long" came on, and my whole life changed instantly.
Wow.
I mean, I just knew that when I heard that sound, I went, "That's what I want to do." I didn't even know what it was, you know.
Very cool. Very cool.
And then, so the Beatles have been, of course, a great influence. And then, you know, fortunately, just things being what they are and the people I know and stuff, you know, I've got to meet Paul. I've got to meet Ringo. I've met George Martin. I met a couple of the wives. Had a chance to talk to some of the engineers and stuff. So that's pretty cool for a guy like me that started out playing music because of them. And all of a sudden you're, you know, shaking hands with Paul McCartney, you know?
Absolutely. Well, hey, meeting your heroes, that to me, that's always like just a phenomenal, you know, life thing that stands in your memory for the rest of your life. Because I mean, it's just a huge moment. Kind of like right now.
Oh yes. I feel the same way about Mark, actually. So
I aim to please, guys.
The funny thing is that, you know, it's true what they say about the bigger they are, the nicer they are. Both of them were really nice guys to talk to, you know. I mean, but you know, at the same time, when I walked into McCartney's dressing room, it was like seeing a cousin there or a brother or something. I mean, he was just such a big part of life. I didn't have time to start thinking about, geez, I'm about to, you know, hang out with Paul McCartney. And we talked for about 20 minutes. Some of the other people that were in the room were completely falling apart. But we talked about baseball. And, you know, really? I said I was going to bring my kid tonight. I saw yours is here. He says, "Oh, that would have been great if you had brought your son," you know. And I'm thinking there's a missed opportunity, you know. And we talked about baseball. He said he'd never been to a game. And within a few months, and I'd like to think I had a little bit to do with it, he started going to Yankees games.
Is that right?
Right.
Yeah.
Pretty
So
cool.
I said, normally in this place, when guys like you aren't in here, there's baseball guys.
But he knew
You know?
what team to root for, at least.
Yes, that's true.
What a front runner.
Well, we like the Yankees too. I mean, we're Jays fans, but we like the Yankees. I'll go see the Yankees every time.
So do I. Yeah.
Same
I
here.
still have my opening day tickets for last season on my fridge.
Cool.
No,
I know what you mean.
they're no good.
Well, I know what you mean though, because you spend all those hours listening to records that somebody makes, and you do kind of feel like you get to know them a little bit.
Yeah.
Old friend.
You're not playing a role, really. That's them. It's not like seeing somebody in a TV show. Nolan and I always talk about how, well, one, I think this started with us complaining that nothing good has really come along in the last couple of decades musically. But we always kind of talk about how between like 65 and 75, maybe even 80, so much happened in music. You went from prog to punk and everything in between. And you were right in the middle of that. I mean, did you have any awareness at that time that something special was going on? Were you just kind of primed up and just ready to have a good time? Was there any kind of awareness at that time?
Well, when I was 12 years old, I slept out by myself. Well, there was another 100 or so kids there, but I had all the money for my public school because academically I was doing very well. So the principal said, okay, here's hundreds of dollars, which you'll stick in your pants or something, and you go get all the Beatle tickets for everybody. And I slept out in front of Maple Leaf Gardens with all this money on me. And then in the morning, when we finally got in, I walked up and said, I'll have 167 tickets. And the guy goes, 2 per customer, kid. So I had the only 2 Beatle tickets in the school, But then, so it went from that. No, by the time that I'd seen the Beatles, I'd met the Pilling brothers, Brian first, who would go on to be in Flood with me. And Ed came back from England. He was 17. I was 13. Brian would have been 14 or 15. And we had the Pretty Ones, which was, it's a stretch of the imagination now, of course, but we were kids, so we were cute. But, but we could sing. I mean, the 3 of us, the 2 brothers, of course, had that thing going. But for some reason, my high voice was the proper fifth on what they were doing harmony-wise. And even though we were children, I mean, we sat in with the band when they were Leave On and the Hawks at the Friars Tavern in 64.
Wow.
My mom was a co-check girl there, and she told the manager, Gord Josie, goes, well,
wow,
like Gregory that comes here every Saturday afternoon, absorbing all this stuff, has got quite a little group. And we went in and played, and 2 disc jockeys back in the golden era of Chum AM, Bob McAdory and Dave Johnson, saw us. And that night they took us up to Club 888, which eventually became the Rock Pile where Led Zeppelin and everybody played.
Right.
And us little kids played a session there at nighttime. So, I mean, I've been so lucky because right from the start, I've always been playing with really good musicians that really wanted to do something,
No kidding.
And it manifested itself. And then after the Pillings went to England, they ended up with Cat Stevens. I was only 15, so I couldn't go.
That's wild.
And so I joined my first blues band. I answered an ad in the newspaper, wanted singing bass guitar player. So I called the guy up. I told him I was 16 because I thought that made me sound more adult. I was only 15. And I joined this band with the guys who eventually became Whiskey Howell. And they taught me that those songs that you like, the Rolling Stones didn't write them. They're by guys named Howlin' Wolf and Muddy Waters and John Lee Hooker. So I got this crash course in the blues from these guys. Then the Pillings come, well, then I was in a psychedelic band with Eddie Schwartz that wrote Hit Me With Your Best Shot and countless other songs. So I was going through all the, when Mark says like between 65 and 75, all that great stuff that was happening.
Yeah.
The next thing I know, the Pillings come back and I'm in Toronto, at least Toronto's very first glam band, which was Flood. And we played in Montreal, and I met Bob Segarini, who was in Montreal's first glam band called the Whackers. And then Bob moved to here. We became great friends. And then all of a sudden the punk thing happened. And even though Ghana was established by that time as a concert band and stuff, we loved those kids. I used to get them to open up for us all the time. We made sure they were fed. We got them beer. I really enjoyed all of those scenes of music,
Wow. It's great. Yeah. It's such, you look back on it and it's a time, I don't think there's ever been a period that was so fertile for lack of a better word than that.
Yeah.
You're going from at the beginning of it, rockabilly, and then again through prog and heavy metal and punk and what they call classic rock. And it just doesn't seem like it's been that way before or since. And so at the time when it was going on and you're having all these experiences, it was just kind of your life, right? I mean,
and the bands were all great. I mean, you couldn't really compare it each. What I love the best about the British invasion era, 63 to 66, was that every single day on AM radio back then, the first day you had the Beatles, and then it was the Stones, and then it was the Animals, the Kinks, Jerry and the Pacemakers, the Searchers, Lulu. It was just every day was another incredible act that sounded different than the one before it. I mean, it was a real rock renaissance back in those days.
Renaissance, yeah.
We're talking about it 50 years ago, and it's relevant, and it's super cool to think about.
Yeah. And if you're lucky, I mean, you get to be a guy my age. I'll be 70 in March. And I've been playing music since I was 13 years old. So, I mean, I guess that qualifies me as a lifer because it's all I've ever done,
Yeah. Yeah.
But now I got this writing thing on the side, everybody dashes out and buys this now.
Yes, please do, folks. Pick up that book.
After they see this show, for sure.
Yeah. We have other things too. I want to show you some of the other stuff that we.
Yeah, please do. Bring it on.
This is interesting. This is these are signed and numbered, but this actually happened. Let me know. Can you see that all right?
Yeah, I can see that.
Guess who?
So Gatto with the Guess Who opening up for us at Minkler Auditorium. Now Burton wasn't in the band then, but Jimmy,
With the Shad Allen?
Jim Cale and Gary Peterson were still in the band, and I think Donnie McDougall was singing, and he sounds just like Burton.
Right, yeah. McDougall.
But I'll always remember because Jimmy and I are still great friends, and he came up to me and I said, "Jesus, Jimmy, I feel really weird about this, having you guys open for us." And he puts his hand on my shoulder and he goes, "That's okay, Greg. This is your 15 minutes of fame. Enjoy yourself." So anyway, we're selling that kind of stuff. I see right here, it says shopgreggonovitz.com. Well, that would be exactly
right. So
you can find this stuff and, this. You don't get the UFO is mine. I don't sell that one.
Too bad.
Here's an interesting piece. This here was done by Long John Baldry.
Oh, wow.
Very cool.
So we were managed by the same people that managed John, and they managed Roy Young, who was a great English keyboard player that actually turned down a spot in the Beatles. Oops. And one day I was in the office and I walked by John and he's drawn this, and I look at it over his shoulder. I said, "Hey, that's me." And he draws Gatto right there. And he goes, "As a matter of fact, it is you." And he gave it to me. And we're actually selling repros of this thing because I think it's just an amazing caricature.
Cool. That's really cool.
And the fact that it's Long John Baldry makes it even doubly cool. So, of course, not to want to flog a dead horse, but we came up with this out of Calgary. I don't know if you can read that, but this is "In Gatto We Trust Cock On Sauce." It's a hot chicken sauce. So if somebody had told me 55 years ago that someday I would be holding up a bottle of my own hot chicken sauce, I go, sure.
Your song titles allow for endless marketing possibilities.
That's so true.
Yes. Well, there were people that took umbrage with the title "Cock On." They said, "You really wouldn't want to put it on there, would you?" I said, "Well, it doesn't go on there. It goes on your chicken wings, One more thing to show you.
Sure, bring it on.
You didn't think you'd get away without me doing this, did you?
Oh, no way, Bob.
These came out. These are the first 3 Gatto albums that came out in England last year. Oh, there we go. So we got Gatto, Who Cares, and An Act of Gatto. They've got 15-page booklets inside of them and hundreds of never before seen photographs. And we're now picking up the rights to also sell these over here in Canada.
Excellent.
Got to do something while we're not working.
Yeah.
I become a businessman.
Well, I mean, going through all the catalog and, the catalog and the old tapes and the photos and curating that stuff, is that something you're involved in?
Well, it's funny you bring that up because I recently turned over about 30 boxes of my archive material to a university downtown. One thing went one way and another. I decided, no, I want it back because there is talk of us eventually having a Toronto Music Museum. And I'd sort of like to see some of the stuff in there. So I got it back, and there's, I mean, literally boxes of stuff where we were talking about other things that we could come up with. And it was pointed out to me, I've got about between 2,000 and 2,500 original Gatto ticket stubs with
Wow.
the date and the price and the venue. And we thought, let's make a poster out of those,
Yeah. Coffee
because
table
someone's going to
book.
look at it and go, I was there, man. I want that,
Exactly. Yeah.
And for $29.95 plus shipping and handling, it could be yours.
It's all yours.
This is the last thing I'm going to show you as far as the swag goes, but this is an album that I am extremely proud of. It's called Amuse Me.
Yes, I love that record.
Yeah. It's
Thank
good.
you, man. When I did this with Paul Dean from Loverboy.
Yeah.
Right.
And we were actually, he was living in Calgary at the time. And I finally talked him out of his house, and it was a nice house. And to come down on Sunday nights and play in my jam band at the Blues Can. And he would just hide in the back, but everybody knew it was Paul Dean, So of course they'd want to get up and play with us. And then I started writing songs. I'd meet Paul at his house in the daytime, and he says, these are the best songs you've written. Let's record them. He says, I'm moving back to Vancouver. So we got together with like the top gun guys in Calgary, all three different saxophone players, three different bass players. All the bass players said to me, why aren't you playing bass on this album? I said, I've heard me before. Let's see what you play. And it was a smart move because the bass playing is fantastic on it. So we recorded the album, and we never really did a lot to promote it, but it's now available and people can have a listen. Mark, you say you've heard it, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I apologize. I'm hogging the interview. No, I got
No,
one more question.
No,
Bring it on. No, it's all good, man.
And it reminded me, I was thinking of this story today about how when Dire Straits were recording Brothers in Arms, they had contacted Billy Gibbons to ask how he got his guitar sound. And he wouldn't tell Knopfler how he got the sound. So Knopfler did his best to approximate it, and they came up with that. You got to move these refrigerators, these color TVs, money for nothing thing. So I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna ask Greg how he got the guitar sound on Letting You Go, and I'm gonna see if he tells me or if he pulls a Billy Gibbons and he doesn't want to give up the secret.
So are you talking about the song Letting You Go Gets Easier Each Day?
Yes.
Well, for starters, most of that great guitar sound was Paul Dean playing.
Oh, wow.
Paul played guitar on most of the album.
I want the recipe.
But you see what he did in that middle section, if you listen closely, he channels all the great ones. He's got Hendrix in there. He's got who else? Everybody is in there. He's got the rockabilly guy, Dwayne Eddy. He's got his. So there's like 6 different distinct sounds of different guitar players, which he actually went and got their sound and their style of playing and meshed it all together.
Wow. That explains it, because it wasn't easy to decipher, and it's killer. And I mean, it's a blazing rocker, and the guitar sounds great against that wet organ. And I was just curious how you did it.
We'll have to get Paul on the show for you.
Yeah, no doubt. Just out of the last 10 years or so, I mean, I think that's as strong a rock record as any. I really think that.
I agree.
Well, I was disappointed that it didn't get more of a reaction because, even Paul and I talk about it. And he said, well, what are you going to do with that album? I said, well, actually, there's nothing we can do until somebody sticks one of the songs in a movie or something. And then all of a sudden, maybe people will pay attention. But I've got another 25 songs that came from this writing session that eventually Paul and I will get together and do part 2 of it,
Very good.
But it was just a wonderful experience because Paul and I would work things out. I'd call him up and say, can you add this line to something? And he'd go, okay, that's a good one. And then he'd get that Dwayne Eddy sound and he'd put it in. And of course we had, Mike Little, incredible B3 Hammond organ player. He was on it. Like I said, the 3 different bass players, Mike Clark from Mikey's Juke Joint in Calgary, he played saxophone on it. Just an amazing amount of great musicians. And they came in for free and said, yeah, man, we'd love to play on a record with you guys.
Wow.
But Paul really outdid himself. I mean, the engineer said to me one time, he says, does it not bother you that a lot of these ideas were yours? And I said, what do you mean? He goes, well, you gave Paul full production credit on this record. I said, yeah. I said, because the ideas that he came up with were 20 times better than the ones I came up with. So he deserves the credit, you know. So we
Well,
gave
and you were humble enough to accept the guidance, which arguably a lot of folks with your success record might not have been. So
Yeah,
I think
true.
there's something to be said for that.
Well, I appreciate that, but with Paul, it's like I could trust him with my music.
Yeah.
We recorded all the bed tracks and everything, and the vocals and everything at MCC Studios in Calgary, because the engineer there, Johnny Gasparic, is the best. And then Paul took them away, and then I went to see Loverboy playing with Journey one night at the arena in Calgary, and Mike Reno took me aside and he says, you know, all Paul does is work on your record. He says, whether it's in the bus, whether it's in the hotel room, whether it's on a plane, or whether it's in his, you know, in the dressing room, he's got the headphones on with the guitar, and all he's doing is working on your album.
Awesome.
And I was very thankful for Paul Dean for doing that. I mean, the song "I Ain't Your Jesus" that's on there,
Yeah.
all that organ stuff didn't exist. Paul created all that with computers.
Is that right?
But it sounds like a Bach organ, you know. And at one point in my song "Jealous Fool," it stops after that incredible guitar. He does like a Brian May guitar solo, and it stops, and it's just the vocal coming in with the guitar. Well, there was a full band there. He just took everything out except for my guitar and my voice.
Huh.
And I went, geez, I would have never thought of doing that.
Right.
Nice
But
stuff.
that's why he sold 50 million records and I sold 5.
Fair enough.
Magic touch. Yeah.
I got offered the job in Loverboy
Did you really?
years ago. Paul and Matt and Mike came to see Gatto at McEwen Hall in Calgary. That's where they were living then, putting the band together. And about a week later, I get a call from Bruce Allen, and he said, Greg, Bruce Allen calling from Calgary.
Wow.
I said, hi, Bruce, how can I help you? He goes, we're putting together a Canadian supergroup, and your name came up. I said, well, thanks, Bruce, but I'm already in one, and I hung up the phone.
That's her.
And,
That's
you know,
cool.
I didn't need that $5 million, you know. Paul and I laugh about that quite often, but he laughs a lot louder and longer than I do. So
Oh, but
what else
yeah,
you want to know?
Great story.
Yeah. Terrific.
Well, I'd ask you about your experience with Sherman and Peabody, the band. How that all
right.
happened, how that formed.
Well, it came out of when the Pillings went to England and I got in with the blues band. Originally, we were called the Backdoor Blues Band, which ended up the Pigs, Pyggs. I think they thought it was a good marketing idea, not. And then after that sort of went its way, we met Buzz Sherman, and we had a keyboard player named Peter Flaherty, and all of a sudden we had a 6-piece band called Sherman and Peabody. And we were doing stuff like, you know, the standard Killing Floor, you know, Howlin' Wolf stuff, electric, the Junior Wells catalog. We were starting to write a few songs, but pretty soon we were the band that was playing at the Rock Pile, opening up for Albert King,
Very cool.
opening up for John Mayall, which is when I met Mick Taylor 2 weeks before he joined the Rolling Stones.
Is that right? Wow.
Oh yeah, we exchanged numbers, and he said, "Do you want to come and hang out and everything?" Yeah. And then he says, "You know, my girlfriend Rose lives in London, Ontario, so I'll be coming back here a lot." And we exchanged. We had ideas, you know. And then 2 weeks later, the bugger goes and joins the Rolling Stones, and then his feet lifted off the ground for the next 10 years. You know,
Yeah, really.
never saw him again.
Wow, interesting.
So anyway, it was great working with Buzz. He was a fantastic frontman. And then, of course, Buzz, you know, went on to Moxie, and then
That's right, Moxie
unfortunately
later
had
on.
his terrible accident on his motorcycle. But we lived in a house together. We actually lived in a house on Willowdale Avenue, and Getty and Alex would come over.
Wow, I was gonna say that's Rush territory there.
Yeah, it was back even then. They would come over, and the house was like disgusting because there was like 6 musicians living in it and their horrible girlfriends. And back in those days, girls didn't do any cleaning or anything. So the place was a pigsty. I mean, the bathtub was full of things. I'm sure that there was like diseases in that bathtub. I mean, you know, we had no food. I mean, it was awful. So, you know, once we started making some money, we really enjoyed making money because, you know, I remember I made the last bits of food. I made a stew one day for dinner. And while we were eating it, the drummer reaches in and he pulled this gigantic bug out of it.
Oh,
It was still
boy.
sort of alive. And he put it down to the thing and everybody else pushed theirs away. He just tucked right into it again. We were hungry.
I guess so. So was Gilmore in the band like, off the bat? He coming later on when
He came in after Wayne. Wayne and BJ, my friend who played harmonica. They went on to form Whiskey Howl. So Gil came in, and a fellow named Henry played bass. And I guess I was playing second guitar back then in that version. It wasn't a very good band. I mean, I think even Buzz had moved on at one point. But, Gil and I, we're great friends today. But, we were kids and we locked horns. And I remember the last thing when I was asked to leave the band, Gil said to me, "You make it your way, Godovitz, and I'll make it mine." And damned if the bugger didn't go on to make $1 million.
No kidding, right?
And just the family tree, all the projects you're talking about, what everybody went on to do, that whole, I'm picturing that band family tree. It's ridiculous.
Isn't it? Yeah.
I mean,
cool.
Even when I think about it, it is, being in a band with Eddie Schwartz, here's a guy that would go on to write these great classic songs. Hit Me With Your Best Shot being the obvious choice. But, he was writing all the songs. So I was always blessed to be in bands with great songwriters.
Yeah, no
and
kidding.
One of the reasons I left Flood was because I remember my mother had a chat with Brian Pilling. And she said, Gregory's writing some pretty good music these days. And he goes, with all due respect, Mrs. Godovitz, Flood is my group. And she told me that, and I quit a week later. I thought, I'm never going to get a chance to do my own material.
Probably right.
And it worked out okay for everybody. I mean, unfortunately, Brian eventually passed away from leukemia, but I remember getting to play him the first 2 Gatto albums, and I could tell, especially when he heard Who Cares, he got it that, maybe we should have included. I mean, I wrote Cock On during the Flood era.
Right.
I wrote Chantel during Flood.
Great song.
There was a bunch of them, but they wouldn't do them.
Play it. Interesting.
And yet Ed and I are still best of friends. We see each other all the time,
Is that right, eh?
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, because that Who Cares? That's just a fantastic record. I mean, top to bottom, just loaded stuff.
Yeah, see, what happened was I did the first album with Dixon Van Winkle, who had done the Ram album with McCartney.
Oh, right.
He was working at Listen Audio in Montreal. And I was convinced that, after watching all the Flood things, that I could produce the first album. Well, quite frankly, I couldn't. I mean, it sounded, except for Under My Hat, it sounded terrible. And so the record company said, he can't produce any more records. So I went to visit an old friend of mine named Tom Turner that used to teach Brian Pilling and I on his old Martin 0018. He would teach us these old farmer chords and stuff. And I told him, I said, I need a name, a made up name like Roy Thomas Baker, that did all the Queen stuff. And he said, well, how about Thomas Morley Turner? And I said, is that your name? Yeah, I said, I'm going to use it. So we told the Polydor guys, we found this English producer named Thomas Morley Turner. He doesn't want any of you people in the studio. So I produced the album using that name. And then it came out in Cashbox. I remember they had an article saying the second Gatto album has got the production sheen of the first Boston album.
Wow.
Which is a pretty heavy compliment, right?
Yeah.
But I'd shot myself in the foot because nobody could find this Thomas Morley Turner. So, did I get any other work from it? No. They said, well, how do we get money to this guy? Well, there isn't no guy. Well, he'll work for free. He loves us. So I did the next 2 albums as Thomas Morley Turner.
It's amazing.
Great stories.
One of the first things that comes up on the internet is this picture that it's been floating around for years. And it's like, you're on stage, and then there's Jeff Healey, who was, of course, enormously popular in the States, and Jose Feliciano, who is one of the best guitar players I've ever seen live. And I had no idea. What's the story behind that? How'd you know those guys?
Well, you'll also see Bob Segarini, because that Gretsch guitar that Jose is playing is my 73. Yes. That's my 73 Tennessean.
Okay.
And so he showed up at the club because I'd found out that Jose was going to play at a place called Miguel's down on Queen Street. And we got invited to go down and see him. So I called up Jeff and I said, how would you like to come and meet Jose Feliciano? And I thought this would be pretty good to get these two blind genius guitar players in the same room, you know? And so Jeff and I sat with Jose and we talked, and it was great for me to listen to these guys. Of course, Jose knew who Jeff was. Jeff knew who Jose was. Jeff knew who I was. Jose didn't have a clue who I was. So I kept my mouth shut for a change and let them talk. And then the next time Jose came into town, the word got out and Jeff invited him to come down to the club and play with us. By this time I was in part of his house band. I got to meet Steve Lukather like that. We became great friends. It was really good. Jeff was he was a generous guy with his talent.
How'd you know Jeff? How far back did you guys go? What's the relationship? What's the, I'm not aware of that story, how you and Jeff got together.
Well, I went to see him at a local club one night. I'd heard about him, and he was playing at this real dump close to where we lived called the Running Pump. And my mouth was just dropped open. I couldn't believe what I was looking at. And I went literally and sat at his feet on the stage, like just gobsmacked.
Watch the technique, right?
And he's, well, there's no way you can watch it. He's playing like this. I mean,
Yeah.
I got a story about that. He says, I understand Greg Gotovitz is in the house tonight. And I said, Jeff, I'm bowing at your feet here. And that's how we met. And then, one thing led to another, and we would run into each other. And then eventually, I remember when Lukather came to town, there was Pat Rush was on stage, and Luke, I was in Jeff's band for the warm up. But then when they all went on stage and it was Luke and Pat Rush and Jeff says, I think we better get Greg back up here to direct traffic. So basically I had a cigarette when you could in one hand and a glass of wine in the other. And I would basically just point at whoever was going to do a solo. And when it was Healy's turn, I would smash him in the shoulder with my ass. And then he would play, right? And
very cool. So
it was funny because I gave Luke a copy of this book the first night I met him. And I couldn't come back the next night because Gatto had a gig. So I got back late and Luke's on stage. And when I walked in, he did one of those We Are Not. He got on his knees and we became best friends. I mean, in fact, I called him up the night that Jeff passed away. A friend of mine in radio called me up and said, if you want to see your friend, you better go down now. And I said, I don't want to see Jeff Healy die, man. So, I just as soon remember the laughs. Right. But I called Luke up and I didn't know he was on tour with Toto. He was in New Zealand. Huh. But we talked for about an hour and we were both crying. And he said, Gatto, get me the number of the hospital. And he actually phoned Jeff up and he says, then called me back. That's what he told me. He was in New Zealand. His phone bill must have been like that. But he got to talk to Jeff one last time. He says, I got a laugh out of him, man, Yeah, so I have a story about that in the new book. It's called Luke, Healy, and Me. And it goes on to, when Luke took me in to meet Ringo Starr, which was pretty amazing.
Wow. Why don't you share that story with us a bit here? That sounds pretty cool.
Well, Luke had called me up and said, what are you up to? And I said, well, I'm coming into Toronto because I was living in Calgary. He goes, well, we're rehearsing the All-Star Band at Casino Ram up in Orillia.
Oh, wow.
Do you want to come and hang out? So I was on the next flight and I was working on the new book. And I went and booked into the hotel and I met the guys in the band. He had Greg Rowley from Santana and Mark Rivera, sax player from Billy Joel's band, was the band leader. Todd Rundgren,
wow.
Greg Bissonette, nobody good, right?
Wow.
And so I got to hang out with these guys. And the first thing that Luke said to them was, he said, this is my friend Gatto. He goes, he didn't get the same break that we got. He goes, but he's exactly the same as you guys are. So instantly, wow. I was one of the boys. Not that it would have bothered me anyway, because you can see how I talk. Of course I'm going to take over. but they all laughed at the story, so it was okay.
Yeah, well, it's a great story.
Anyway, the last night before they were starting their tour, Luke says to me over dinner, he says, so you haven't asked yet, do you want to meet the boss? And I said, Springsteen's here? And he goes, no. He says, that's what we call Ringo. I said, well, that's okay, because I've already met Bruce before. So we go down to this room. The hall is getting full. We're supposed to meet at this door. This guy comes and grabs me. And I took Joe Rockman, who was Jeff Healy's bass player. Okay. Joe was a good friend of mine. And I knew he knew Luke because Luke used to play with Jeff a lot. So he was my date. So we go in and the guy says, no photographs, no autographs. I said, dude, all I want to do is shake the cat's hand. And he goes, and especially no shaking. He just bumps forearms.
Huh.
Right at that minute, the door opens and Ringo walks in and he goes, I don't shake hands, I just bump forearms. And I said, that's exactly what he said you would say. So he starts laughing. So we're talking to him. And I said, I've been here for the whole week. I've been the guy walking. At one point, they were starting, what would you do if I sang out of tune? Which was out of tune. And I was walking out of the auditorium to go have a smoke and thinking, I just got up and walked out on Ringo Starr while he was singing with my friends out of tune. So I said to him, I said, you look great. I said, I've been here all week. You sound good. I said, it's too bad you couldn't get anybody good in your backup band. And then he thought about it for a second and he burst out laughing, right? So I was basically just being me in front of Ringo Starr and it seemed to work.
You must have loved it, I imagine.
But next thing I knew, I had two big guys carrying me out of the room. But actually, it was Ringo that said, would you like to get a photograph done? And it's in the new book. And there's me and a picture of me and Luke and Joe, and there's a picture of me and Ringo and Joe.
Oh, very cool.
So, yeah, it was a good moment. It was, I got to meet two Beatles, and both times it wasn't where you'd be going, oh, my God, because I sort of can understand it to a very, very minute degree when people come up after a show and I meet them and I can see that they're nervous. I think, well, there's no reason why you should be, but you go out of your way to try and make people feel a little bit more at ease. And of course, John or Paul and Ringo are experts at it.
Yeah, experts at that. Exactly. Yeah, absolute experts.
You wouldn't want them mad at
you. I don't know. No way.
Where are we going next?
Well, shoot over to Mark here.
Mark.
Yeah, absolutely. So, on Sign on the Line, I wanted to ask you about, because this is coming at a time. I think it's on your third album, right? Is it
Yeah.
Active Gato?
Gato.
And I'm listening to the song. I'm like, this is coming from a young man who's pretty disillusioned with the music industry already. And it's like, when was that? 1978, something like that? Is that 79?
Oh, yeah. And you're right on the mark.
Okay, so that's what I was going to add. What's the story behind that? That's not fiction. There's truth to that. You meant what you were saying.
The whole lyric is based on exactly what I was feeling. When I said you can't deal with record execu jives, most of the time it's executives, record executives. I thought those guys were such jive ass guys and the song started out. I wish I still had the original copy, but it's what got me thrown off the label. I wrote, Dear Tim, who was Tim Harold, who was the president of Polygram Records at the time.
Wow.
And I wrote those lyrics as a letter to him.
Wow. Okay.
And it made sense as a letter, but then I realized this is also a song. And we were thrown off the label within a month.
It's like a working for MCA type of thing, right? Like Skinner did that song, and they were tired of what was, the people that were trying to sign the contracts. Was there a certain incident that precipitated you being that pissed off, or was it just a pattern of shit over time?
I was tired of being promised all these things that never came to fruition. I think the second lyric is, this is from their point of view. Boys, you must understand it's to the effect of, you must understand that it's not up to me. I'm a victim of corporate rule and the new policy. So you'll do it our way or no way at all. You'll be through because you're not in the majors. In other words, you're not in the major leagues and you're just a minor leaguer. That won't do. So basically I was pointing the finger going, we deserve some respect here, but we're not getting it. And wow. I was never afraid to, it got me the reputation, as Canada's bad boy and all the rest of that stuff. But I would have been doing the same thing anyway, because I was always a guy that if I saw some sort of injustice, whether it was social or business or whatever, I was always the first guy to say, hey, look, that's not right what's going on here. And of course, it doesn't make you a lot of friends. When I think about the times that I always say that every time I got to this juncture in the road where I could go this way, and there's like fairies and wine gum trees and, chocolates everywhere. I always went this way and there's like a cliff right there, It's like the time when Morris Gibb came into the studio in Criteria when we were safety mastering and Chantel was on, and he came in. Well, you mind if I pop in? I said, well, you're already in. Come on in. So he came in and he listened to the overture and he listened to Chantel. Then he went and got Chris, I think his name was Chris Richardson and Albie Galutin, which were the guys that made the Bee Gees multi-zillion-dollar disco sound. They were recording, they'd recorded Saturday Night Fever there.
Oh, wow.
And he brought them in to have a listen to what I was doing. And he's going, well, this is great. We could do this with a 70-piece orchestra. And they said, Morris, he's doing okay on his own. He doesn't need us. But then there was a flutter on the tape at Chantel, and he starts talking. I said, hey, shut up. I say to the engineer, run that back. Comes back, it flutters again. He goes, well, this is fantastic. He goes, you come and stay at my place. I want you to meet Robert Stigwood. And I said, look, here's what I want you to do. I get 2 weeks to make a record. You guys get 6 months or however long, and your machinery just ate my master tape. I want you to get out of here now. He leaves. Engineer runs it again, and then it stops. And then the song starts again. And I went, hang on, what's going on? He goes, it was a bad piece of tape that the engineer forgot to edit out of the master.
Huh.
So I said, so hang on a second. Hang on. Do you mean to tell me that I just told Morris Gibb, who wants me to go and live in his palace and meet Robert Stigwood to get the hell out of here? Is that what you're trying to tell me? Oh, Morris. And he was, I don't want to talk to you. That was the end of that. So once again, I could have gone that way. Oh, no. But I went that way instead and straight down the tube. But I get a story out of it. So what the hell?
Well,
Absolutely. It's a good story too. One other thing I wanted to ask you musically, because I'm listening to some of these things and you have a couple tunes. I think Tough Times is one of them that use sort of some prominent string arrangements. Are you the string arranger? Were you the guy that was sort of behind all that, or how did that?
It was my idea to do that song with my acoustic guitar and a cello, and I got it was Eric Shankman, Peter Shankman. Eric Shankman's a guitar player for the Spin Doctors.
Oh, okay, right.
His dad was Peter Shankman, who was the first cellist for the Toronto Symphony.
Wow.
And so I got him in, and he comes in, and he says, where's my chart? And I said, I don't have a chart. I got 4 chords, A, C, G, and D. He says, well, I need a chart. I'm a classical musician. I need a chart. So I said, well, why don't we just try, you just play the A, and I need a chart. I said, you can play that thing, can't you? He goes, I said, well, good. If you can play that, then you can play this. And then I came up with that line. Which he wrote down, the da 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 da, and he wrote it down, and then we made the record like that. But quite often, like in the song Once Again from the same album, when I played piano on it, even though I couldn't play the piano, but I thought I would try it. I thought at the end of the song, let's do like what McCartney did or what George Martin did with a string quartet, but let's use 4 different saxophones to do it.
Huh.
And arranged it like that, And so, yeah, that stuff was there, but I have absolutely no formal training at all. Just happened to, you hear the melody. It
wouldn't be the same songs at all without those parts, though. So that's sort of a serendipitous thing,
Yeah.
But keep in mind, I was totally besotted with George Martin and the Beatles work.
Right. So that's where that's coming from.
Yeah.
No
Sense.
2 songs by those guys sounded the same. Even in the old days, there was those elements on the first couple of albums with the 3-part harmony and the woos and all that. But they got good so fast, and all of a sudden they didn't mind George Martin playing that beautiful sped up harpsichord part in My Life. It was part of the vernacular after that,
Yeah.
So I always had that mindset that live we play guitar, bass, and drums, but in the studio, the world's our oyster. We can do whatever the heck we want, which is how the overture came about,
Hey, it was a great piece. It's a great piece too.
Yeah, and it worked. We used it for 40 years afterwards, and every time it came on the PA speakers, everybody went nuts. So they knew we were coming out,
Yeah,
It works.
We're talking about it now, you know,
exactly.
40, 50
Exactly.
years later. So amazing.
Amazing is right. Well, hey, boys, like we're out of time already.
Ah,
We talked to Greg for 2 hours.
we
No,
got to do this again. I'm not done with my questions.
Me too.
Next
I
time,
gotta
get a
wait.
guy that doesn't talk so much.